Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, my name is Amjad. Today I'm with a very special personality. I got to know her just recently. I met her a couple of times but never got to know her. But recently, when I discovered about her life, and I was completely blown away. And I felt like having this person recorded, interviewed for you all to learn how one can live an enriched life. So let's welcome and learn from her. Welcome, Christine Coombe.
Thank you. Well, good to be here.
Thank you so much for giving me time and ready to inspire the world from your achievements. First of all, please let us know, who is Christine Coombe?
Oh, who is Christine Coombe? Well, Christine Coombe is I play all the traditional roles. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, but I think my biggest role is as an English language teacher and teacher trainer and mentor to English language teaching professionals around the world. I'm also a Toastmaster, which is how we actually became acquainted.
Absolutely, I was coming to that. That's the reason I did not mention distinguished Toastmaster. I will ask you, how did you become a Toastmaster and then reach to the pinnacle of Toastmastering, which is distinguished Toastmastering?
Well, I attended, I have to be frank with you, a Toastmaster meeting. I think it was way back in 2003, and I went with kind of an arrogant attitude, thinking, what could Toastmasters do for me? I wanted to go to see what it was, to see how I could start a chapter for the students in my college. So I thought, what can these people possibly teach me? I have a doctorate. I'm a native speaker of English. I give talks at big conferences around the world. What could I possibly learn? And from that first moment, that first meeting way back then, I was just mesmerized, because although I'm comfortable in an academic type of situation, I would have been back then very uncomfortable about what we're doing now, talking on a personal level. So for me, that was the main motivation. And of course, once everyone sees the value of the Toastmaster curriculum, if you will, you know that it's great for students, but it's great for everybody from all walks of life, from all professions. So
do you recommend Toastmaster?
Oh my God. In fact, I always tell teachers that I talk to, the second best professional development that I've ever done for myself in my entire life, with the first being my doctorate. The second is Toastmasters. So, and it kind of took me around the same number of years to do all the Toastmaster levels. I wasn't one of these people who, did a DTM in a year, basically. It took me like about a year to do everything, because I did it in a slow way.
All right.
So I got my DTM in 2010, and of course, maybe it's the same with the new pathways, but in the old Toastmasters, in order to get to DTM, it's not just the speeches, it's the leadership service that you need to go through, and that kind of thing was the harder part for me.
It's still the same.
Yeah, okay, yes. So I can't stress enough how important Toastmasters has been for my own personal and professional development.
So that means the person who speaks English and English language is your native language.
It is, yes.
And you are a teacher.
An English teacher,
and
yes.
you are a confident person. You've been teaching teachers.
Right.
And you recommend Toastmasters.
Definitely, definitely, yeah.
So what else do you need, guys?
Definitely.
All right. Christine, one more thing which I found very interesting. You have traveled to so many countries. Can you tell us how many countries have you been to?
At last count, 146.
146?
Yes.
I envy.
It's taken me a long time. Okay.
Whatever.
It's taken me a long time. But yes, and it's my family, it's our number one goal and our number one thing to do. So it's kind of a family affair. We started traveling when we were teenagers, but it was through the US. My first overseas trip was to the Cayman Islands in the Caribbean, where I went with my friend. I had a good friend, and she had a motorcycle accident, and they had a vacation plan, so she had broken her collarbone, so they invited me to come and kind of be the driver, basically. So I went as the driver and the person to help get her around and stuff, and It was an amazing place, and the rest was history.
Wow. 146 countries. And I was bragging about my 85 countries. Now I feel like you need
Still,
more to
but your 85
longest.
countries have been in just a couple of years. I started
years.
traveling in, over 40 years ago. So,
All right.
so you can
Thank
you
you
can
so much
have your
for calming me down,
85.
yeah.
Yes, definitely. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you so much. Christine, tell everyone, why should they travel? Why you have spent, because traveling is not easy and it's not inexpensive. It takes time, it takes money. Why people should travel?
Well, I think travel is a learning experience. It's an enjoyable experience, and it's not easy, as you say, and it is quite expensive. And over the years, I know that there are so there are lots of people, they're like travel haters, and they basically say, why do you travel? You don't own a house, you don't own any property, you don't have a few million in the bank. Why are you spending your money on travel? There are people who are judgmental like that. And for me, for example, if I were going to buy a car, for example, I would not spend 100,000 dirhams to buy a car, and that's kind of a cheap price. So I'm cheap in certain ways, like buying cars, but I would think nothing of spending maybe that same amount to take my family and I on a wonderful summer vacation. I wouldn't even think twice.
Wow.
So not that I do, but I wouldn't question a high-priced vacation like I would never buy a designer bag,
I see.
but I would spend that same amount of money on tickets for me and my family to go someplace new.
Wow. That's impressive.
So why should we travel? I think for the learning element alone. And I think one of the best things that I have learned from travel, it's gratitude. And whenever I go to a certain place, I first of all, I feel better about who I am. And I also appreciate what I have more, not only from being an American, but also from living in this wonderful place in the UAE. So I really feel like I appreciate what I have more, and I feel lucky to be who I am and to have had the luck that I've had in life to be able to afford such a practice.
Great. I was coming to that. Actually, you have covered a bit of my question I'm going to ask you now. Can you just tell us the Christine before traveling and after traveling in few lines, like how
Well,
do you describe?
like even my high school friends remember how obsessed I was with travel. In fact, one of my first goals in high school was to be a flight attendant.
All right.
Why? Because of the travel perks. I kind of outgrew that, and I was kind of lucky that I found my profession, the ideal profession, and that's being an English teacher. And an English teacher meaning TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, because a lot of the jobs are in foreign countries, like the one I live in now. So for me, there was never really a Christine before travel, because my parents early on, we would plan for a nice vacation, and although we weren't going to foreign countries, one year we went to California, Nevada, Arizona, and then another year we did Florida. So we had trips like that. So we discovered areas within our own country. And so I can't really ever imagine a time when I didn't travel, although probably since the year 2000, the last 20 or so years, I've been traveling a lot more, because not only do I pay for my own travel, because of my area of expertise within my profession, I get invited to a lot of conferences overseas, and I do a lot of consulting with the U.S. State Department in different places. So I've seen a lot of the world that way.
I see. All right.
So,
and a similar question with Toastmasters. How do you describe Christine before Toastmaster and after Toastmaster? And of course, this is lifelong journey, and you're still a Toastmaster. I know
exactly. Well, I think what I would say is that before Toastmasters, I was a fairly competent speaker within my own area of academic expertise, because I know my stuff. I have a doctorate, and I use that doctorate use the knowledge I gained in my doctorate, which is an important thing as well in anything. So I could speak very well in a conference, although I have learned a lot of techniques through Toastmasters to be more memorable. You know, I'm very proud of the fact that when I get invited to a conference, 90% of the time they invite me back to the same conference, or they invite me to come again. After Toastmasters, I think I'm just more relaxed. In 2006, that's when I really became serious about Toastmasters, because I got elected to organize the big TESOL conference in Florida. And I knew I would have to speak in front of like 7,000 people. And I thought, ooh, I better, you know, at least get enough confidence so that I won't pass out in such a stressful event. And you know, I still remember that whole, and it was one of those events where they were inviting the mayor of Tampa to be the guest to open the conference. And for anybody who's ever organized an event, anytime you have a VIP, it's always a recipe for disaster, because they are either early or late. They're never on time. And it doesn't matter how much time you've put into the running sheet and the schedule for the opening. You know, I think the opening segment was 14 minutes. She was going to do 5 minutes, and I was only supposed to be responsible for 2 or 3 minutes. But you know how that goes. Well, you know, she was running late. So literally, I had to speak. I had 3 to 4 minutes prepared, but I had to speak for 14 minutes. And now that doesn't sound like a lot of time unless you're in front of 7,000 people. And so many people said that, like, how did you cope with that? Because it looked like you knew you'd have. So one of the things that you get with Toastmasters is you learn how to think on your feet, and you learn how to look at the opportunity having an extra few minutes in front of 7,000 people, rather than the panic that some people might be overtaken with.
That's right.
So, I mean, I just for that event alone was worth all my Toastmaster meetings in the past 20 some odd years.
Wow. So now you can categorically manage every situation in your life.
Well,
by the grace of Almighty.
I mean, I can't think of it, although when I did my second icebreaker in the online meeting the other day, I felt surprisingly nervous, because one of the things that's new for me is the virtual aspect. And so that is one area that I feel that I could develop with. And since a lot of most Toastmaster meetings now are virtual, so that's another area to conquer for us Toastmasters.
So much is done, so this little is not a big deal. And you actually, that's the meeting you inspired, and that's why we are connected today.
Oh yes, that's true. Yes, yeah, thank you.
And I'm sure a lot of people will connect with you. All right. One more thing which is even more inspiring for me. I don't remember if I've ever read 49 books, and she's the one who has written 49 books. That's something, wow, I cannot express with my words.
Well, I have to correct you. I haven't written 49 books. I have published 49 books. So many of those books are edited. So I basically bring together teams of people who write on a certain theme, as well as I do, and I put everything together. So many of my books are edited.
All right.
So, but that's still a huge task.
Of course,
I know.
That's what I'm saying. Editing or publishing or writing is not as easy task.
It's quite frankly, it's only the first book that's difficult, because you don't know the system. And the trick is to never really write on anything that you're not interested in. I have 2 books on my CV that I got in. I actually published a book. I invited a colleague to submit an article to one of my books, and he did. And to thank me, he said, "Thank you for getting me interested in your specialty, which is assessment." And then he said, "I want to get you working on my area of interest," which is, I can't tell you what it is because everybody will know who this colleague is. So we got not one, but 2 book contracts on his area of specialization. And it was an edited book, and when I got these chapters in, they were the most dire. I thought, and Oh, and I thought, oh my, how will I get through it? Because I was not interested in this topic at all. But I was a commitment, so I did those books. Those were the hardest going of all my 49 to date. But, and quite frankly, I have never responded to invitations to speak on this topic because, although now with 2 books, people consider me kind of an expert in this area, but I will never speak on it because, another golden rule for public speaking is that if you don't really love what you're talking about, how will you inspire others to love it as well? So that's the trick, is to find something that you're invested in and that you can engage with so that the process is fun for you.
Great. I think you have mentioned something, area of interest.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us if somebody would like to write a book or add into their CV?
Right.
What are the few tips, 2-3 tips?
Well, I think what you need to do is you need to decide what type of book, okay? For me, for academics, writing is part of our job. So there are teacher books. All of my books are designed for teachers, okay, teacher development books. But there are also textbooks that teachers use to teach their students. It's on my list of goals to do a textbook, but I haven't as yet done that. And I'm thinking that that shouldn't be on my list of goals, because if I had really wanted to do a textbook, I would have done it before now.
Right.
So I think that the area that I've chosen, because I have so many books and I keep getting invited to do more, that's my area of talent, and I probably shouldn't deviate from that. So I think thinking about what is meaningful for you and what you think you have to give others is important. And the reason that I got writing my first the first book that I actually wrote, which was a book on language assessment, and I only did it because I was doing teacher training for teachers to actually learn how to write tests for their students, and I couldn't find a book I really liked to use, so I thought, I'm just going to write my own materials, and those materials eventually evolved into a book.
All right.
So that's one way where you see a need, and if you do training and development, for example, you see a need, because lots of times if we've got really strong feelings about an area, oftentimes we can't find materials that we really can relate to, and if you can't relate to those materials, you can't really use them with other people. So, but I know your feelings about reading, but I also find that another way to realize how much you know is to read in that area, because an important part of academic publishing is to find your own niche. But in order to do that, you have to read what other people have written about your area of interest, and then you take it one step further.
All right. Hope you got some tips for your upcoming book.
Hope so.
I will not take much of your time, Christine. Thank you so much. A bit about your life, personal life, if you'd like to share. How did you manage traveling so many countries? How did you manage writing or publishing these books and doing a service? You're a teacher, of course. It's not an easy job. It's full-time job. How do you manage your family life?
Well, unfortunately, I don't, or fortunately, it doesn't matter how you look at it. Lots of my colleagues say to me, well, you can do this because you don't have a husband, you don't have any kids to take care of, etc. And they look at being single without having kids as being an advantage. And sometimes, I mean, it's an advantage in a sense where I don't have other people, I'm not other directed. I can decide how I spend my time, and when and if to work or whatever. So that they look at that as an advantage, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it can be a disadvantage, because another thing you need to know is that a person can't work 24 hours a day. And if you're kind of work focused like I am, sometimes I'll work so much and I'll be half blind by the end of the night because I've been on the computer too long.
That's right.
So sometimes having family is the nice balancing equation that you need so that you can recharge and rejuvenate. For me, traveling is a way to rejuvenate. I work very hard for 10 months out of the year, and then when it's summertime, the family and we go off and we, do our thing. We see the world, and they don't I have to get up early in the morning, like 4 a.m. to read my email because they're very, oh, you can't do any work. This is our time, basically. They live in the States, so that's how it is. So, it can be an advantage to not have to take care of other people or cook for other people or, do things for other people. But for me, it's a disadvantage because I think that, they add a lot of
so it cannot
balance to life.
So it cannot be considered as if you don't have a family, like as you mentioned, and you can have world traveled or write so many books. It's all about having balanced life. Balance means you should have a family as well.
I see my colleagues who have kids and who have families, who live with families. They have better balance than I have. And maybe you can't write so many things, but the more you do, my motto personally is the more you do, the more you can do.
Absolutely.
So it's only hard. The first book is hard because you don't know the system. But as you do something more often, you become better at it. And I think that if you really want to write a book, it doesn't matter how many people you have to take care of or what, you'll do it. And if that means getting up earlier in the morning to do something, I'm a big fan of the productivity literature out there and having just written a chapter in a book on productivity. And one of the major findings in productivity research is that the most productive time for a person is the time in the morning. In fact, a really good book that I recently read is entitled What the Most Productive People Do Before Breakfast. And it's about how you should be using your mornings. And when I say mornings, I'm not saying you get up at 3 a.m. to work. You get up at 5 or 6 a.m. and you do stuff before everybody else in your household wakes up. So you have some focus time. So if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. That's pretty much the takeaway from that.
So what I'm perceiving is whatever situation you are in, you can make use of it. It's totally up to you. So opportunities are blessings in disguise.
Exactly, yes.
Anything is possible. There's nothing bad, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing good, there's nothing great. It's all in your head.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
DTM Christine and Madam Christine for inspiring us. Ladies and gentlemen, as she mentioned, she has traveled 146 countries and published 49 books, not for kids, but for teachers. Something very impressive. I'm also on my way to publish my books. That's where I well connected with her when I heard her speech. As I mentioned, I met her a couple of times in different meetings, but when I heard her first speech she delivered after becoming a distinguished Toastmaster, and she doesn't need anymore, but still she is doing it. That's where we feel like person who has achieved a lot in their life and they are still learning. This is where we get inspiration from. I personally do. Where you get your inspiration from, keep yourself inspired, circle yourself with such people so you feel elated, motivated, inspired, persuaded. I'm keeping myself. Till next video, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep everyone around you safe with your positivity. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you, Amjad. All the best with your book.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.